Dhamma Talk from the Buddha, Wat Pa Saptavi Thamaram, Saturday, March the 5th, 2022. Dhamma Talk on Acariya Puja Day, the 6th cycle or 72nd birth anniversary of poor Mae Kruba Ajahn Luang Por Gunhah Sukhakamo. Today, March the 5th, 2022, is an auspicious day, for today is the day of poor Mae Kruba Ajahn Luang Por Gunhah Sukhakamo's 6th cycle or 72nd birth anniversary. During the 52 years since his ordination as a Buddhist monk, Luang Por Gunhah has become our refuge, highly revered teacher and spiritual leader. So today we are all gathered here at the monastery to express our gratitude towards Luang Por Gunhah by offering the most superior gift of all, our devotional practice, Patipadā Pūja, as a gift of homage to our teacher, Acariya Puja. It is good that we all here have performed devotional rituals with gifts, Āmisa Pūja, but it will be more noble that we all offer devotional practice of Sīla, Samādhi and Paññā, with Dhamma as focus and priority, and Nibbāna as end goal. Luang Por Gunhah has always stated that he will show us the path to Nibbāna, so it is important that we all offer Luang Por the best of gifts, our devotional practice of body, speech and mind, so that Nibbāna eventually arises in our minds. 72 years ago on March the 5th, 1950, third day of the waxing moon, fourth lunar month, the year of the tiger, Luang Por Gunhah was born in Kampanpu village, Kok Khong sub-district, Waranchamrak district, Ubon Ratchathani province, Thailand, as nephew of Ajahn Chah, his father being the brother of Ajahn Chah, and later trained under Ajahn Chah's guidance. Highly recognized and revered as key figures supporting the Thai Buddhist community, both Ajahn Chah and Luang Por Gunhah are well known for their Dhamma perfections, their loving kindness to all sentient beings, their uncompromising strictness in Dhamma practice, leading to realization of wisdom, and for their dedication in teaching their disciples through their graceful paths of practice and their noble examples. Luang Por Gunhah has kindly shared the memory of his childhood life as follows. As a kid, he grew up just like any other kid in his rural area, except for one difference. Since he was little, his mind was always occupied with strong samvega, a fearful trembling, yet morally motivating state of sadness, evoked by birth, old age, sickness, and death. He was determined to ordain as a Buddhist monk, to escape from the cycle of birth and death, and to search for ultimate happiness. The event that caused samvega to arise in his mind was his eldest brother's death at the young age of 18. Diligent, determined, and obedient, his elder brother was a great help in all family matters, a key person in raising the younger siblings, and the main provider of the family. On the day that his elder brother passed away, his mother was devastated, cried tears of blood, and screamed as if she had lost her mind. Having witnessed his elder brother slowly passing away, and his mother's tragic condition right in front of his eyes, as a small kid at the age of 6, Luang Por was shocked and shaken to the core, while realizing the reality of life as it is normally lived: birth, old age, sickness, death, and separation from what is dear. Ever since, deep down inside the 6-year-old boy's mind, samvega arose. It was deeply rooted in his mind, a very clear and constant feeling, along with the determination to ordain as a monk. Time passed by, until in the 1970s, Luang Por eventually got the blessing to ordain from his parents. Originally, Luang Por wished to be ordained under Ajahn Chah, Luang Por's uncle, but the plan had to be changed as Ajahn Chah at that time was not a preceptor or upajjhaya, a bhikkhu with the authority to confer a full monastic ordination. Instead, Luang Por Yai, a well-respected senior monk of the family, recommended that Luang Por ordain at Wat Supat Wanaram, Muang district, Ubon Ratchathani province, and then move to Wat Nong Papong to practice under Ajahn Chah's guidance. So Luang Por and his family travelled to Ubon Ratchathani the very next day to prepare for the ordination ceremony at Wat Supat Wanaram. This is one of the monasteries where Ajahn Sao Kantasilo and Ajahn Man Buridatta stayed during the time that they wandered across the land to teach Dhamma Vinaya and forest tradition Buddhism. They subsequently became widely renowned and respected for their way of practice and teaching. Wat Supat Wanaram is recognized as a Buddhist heritage monastery and has attracted and cultivated many respectable disciples of the Kammatthana lineage and tradition ever since. At Wat Supat Wanaram, after ordination as Anagarika, with shaved head and white clothes, Luang Por then undertook the observance of the 8 precepts, memorized and practiced all the required chanting verses, including formal requests for going forth in full ordination, Pappaja Upasampada, Naga chant, formal requests for precepts, Anumodana and blessing chants, morning and evening chants, as well as 7 Parita chants. He practiced how to wear the triple robes, Tichivara, properly, learn about precepts, duties and etiquettes, Sīla Charavata, training rules, Sekhiya, and the basic monastic codes of discipline that newly ordained monks must be careful with in order to avoid committing any offences, Apatti. He came to a thorough understanding all the bhikkhu's rules. After 3 months practicing as Anagarika, observing 8 precepts and eating only 1 meal per day, on July 4th, 1970 at 1:40 p.m., Luang Por ordained as a monk at Wat Supat Wanaram. His preceptor was Praraja Dhammasutthi, chief monk of Ubon Ratchathani province, Dhammayuttika Nikaya, and his Pali name was Sukhakamo, meaning one who is blessed with happiness. After this full ordination ceremony, although regarded as a new bhikkhu or navaka, Luang Por strictly followed Dhamma Vinaya and gracefully performed vata, duties concerned with conduct, by being well behaved and self-restrained. He cultivated shame and fear of doing evil, hiri ottappa, as protector of the mind. As a new bhikkhu, Luang Por said that he exercised special care to ensure that he wore the robes properly, as he felt ashamed if he did not do so. He was active and proper in all duties, chanting, giving precepts, anumodana, and blessings, as if he was a senior monk who had been ordained for many years. Luang Por said that because he diligently trained himself to perform these duties since his ordination as an Anagarika, once he was fully ordained, he was able to properly and gracefully conduct himself as a monk. During the first years of ordination, he studied Dhamma Vinaya on his own, except for when doubt about any of the monastic codes arose. Whenever this happened, he would then go and ask the senior monks for a detailed explanation. Luang Por taught his bhikkhu disciples to strictly follow the monastic codes by observing the 227 precepts, or 227 types of conduct that needs to be avoided. The 227 precepts can then be summarized into 3 precepts, which are the observation of body, speech, and mind. At the end, all precepts can be summarized into just 1 precept, which is to observe the mind. Any monk who can completely observe the mind, allowing no wrong, can observe all 227 precepts in an unblemished and unblotched manner. Sīla. Observing Sīla can restrain the coarse defilements, or Vitikama, transgressing defilements, causing unskillful actions through the body and speech. Samādhi. Samādhi can suppress medium defilements such as kamachanda, sensory desire, vyapada, ill will, tina mida, sloth and torpor, udacha kukacha, restlessness and worry, and vichikicha, doubt. Paññā. Subtle defilements such as anusaya defilements, latent tendencies, avijja, ignorance, tanha, desire, upadana, attachment, are completely eradicated through paññā, the wisdom leading to attainment of enlightenment. One of Luang Por's constant reminders is attaining Nibbāna is not that difficult. Just follow the breath. Whoever wishes to attain Nibbāna from this second onwards, just be mindful of every single breath, day and night, and do not miss even a single one. Those with complete Dhamma perfections will surely attain Nibbāna, at the earliest, within 7 days, or by 7 years, or at the very latest, before their last breath. Luang Por's aforementioned reminder may sound simple, but it refers to the highest level of ultimate truth, Paramatta Satcha. That is, for anyone to achieve mindfulness of every single breath, day and night, without fail, they must be enabling the best condition in regard to the body and mind, of Sīla, Samādhi and Paññā. This teaching shows us that there exists a path of practice that is sensible and possible for all of us, cultivating mindfulness of the breath, anapanasati, breathing in feeling at ease, breathing out feeling at ease, or breathing in feeling peaceful, breathing out feeling peaceful, or mental repetition of Bud, Ho, while allowing the in and out breath. The path of practice of Luang Por is to cultivate the mind for path, fruition, and Nibbāna, with Nibbāna as focus and priority. From the very first day of ordination, Luang Por has taught and brought Dhamma into the lives of bhikkhus, bhikkhunis, samaneris, nuns, upasakas, upasikas. He has shown them all the path to Nibbāna, which is to follow the path of practice of the Buddha, the middle way, aloof from the two extremes of asceticism and sensual indulgence, with Dhamma as focus and priority. Luang Por has never owned any possessions since he became a monk. He only consumes 1 meal per day and does not have a bank account in his own name. He does not read the newspapers, watch TV, listen to the radio, have a cell phone, use the internet, or have any social media accounts. In 1991-92, Luang Por did not accept a title conferred by Phra Somdet Ñāṇasamvara, the supreme Buddhist patriarch, and replied in a letter that he did not wish to have any title. Luang Por's disciples are spread across 30 branch monasteries in Thailand and abroad. Since Luang Por became a monk, the donations made to him by his followers have exceeded 1 billion baht. But he has never given any of it to his parents, relatives, nor friends, as there exists no favoritism in Nibbāna. On the contrary, Nibbāna is a pure state of mind attained through the uprooting of defilements by way of giving and the relinquishing of I and mine. Instead, Luang Por has given back to society, building schools and hospitals, and by all means possible, doing his best to benefit the public. The path that Luang Por has practiced is that of giving, relinquishing, and following the path of practice of the Buddha. Venerable Ajahn Mun, Venerable Ajahn Chah, Venerable Ajahn Mahabua, and Venerable Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. Without the Buddha, there would have been no Buddhism. Who was the Buddha? The Buddha was the most selfless and giving person in the world, willing to give away his flesh and blood, body and mind to practice the Dhamma to perfection. In the distant past, he was born as a human, trading goods to earn a living to provide for his mother. At that time, there were no religions, and he did not do any merit-making or give any donations to anyone. However, he made merit with his mother by expressing gratitude through his devotion toward her. It was the merit from the good deeds he did for her that cultivated his mind to have the first aspiration to become one of the Buddhas in the future. At one time, he and his mother brought with them all their goods and took a trading ship across the ocean. Unfortunately, the ship was wrecked during this journey. In that critical moment, his only thoughts were to save his mother's life, as other assets could be acquired any time, but his mother was irreplaceable. Leaving all of his assets behind, he gathered every ounce of strength he had, and he was able to carry his mother on his back and swam across the ocean to the shore. While swimming, exhausted, his mind was deeply saddened and filled with samvega to see others on board the same ship with him desperately drowning and dying in the ocean. From that moment on, in the mind of the young man, a strong aspiration arose to become a Buddha in the future, to lead all sentient beings out of the suffering of cyclic existence, as only a Buddha's enlightenment and nothing else has such great power to lead all sentient beings out of suffering. From that time onwards, he made a resolute vow to be one of the next Buddhas. Lacking any desire to acquire wealth or power, or to become a wealthy person or a king, only aiming to attain the Buddhahood, he kept on practicing good deeds and Dhamma perfections without saying a word about his aspiration, lifetime after lifetime, for 7 asankhayas, incalculable eons. Only after that he uttered the phrase, "May all the wholesome deeds that I have performed be the cause and conditions for me to attain Sabbanyutta Jnana in the future." Sabbanyutta Jnana refers to the wisdom that knows all there is to know. Only those who attain Sabbanyutta Jnana can attain Buddhahood in the future. He repeatedly avowed his aspiration to be a Buddha for another 9 asankhayas, Navasankhaya Vachakan, every time he performed wholesome deeds. His aspiration to become a Buddha was so strong that a thought of becoming something else, such as a wealthy person, a great god, or a great Brahma, never crossed his mind. Altogether, 16 asankhayas passed until he finally received a prediction, Vyakarana, from the Dipankara Buddha in the time period that he was born as an ascetic called Sumedha. Please note that Vyakarana, the Pali word for prediction, means realization or accomplishment of an act, and not just an estimation or assumption. With Sabbanyutta Jnana that could see into Sumedha's mind and all of his wholesome and meritorious deeds, Dipankara Buddha paused before Sumedha and predicted that in the next 4 asankhayas and 100,000 kalpas, this ascetic would become a Buddha. He also prophesied that Sumedha in his last lifetime would be born as Gautama, son of King Suddhodana and the Queen Siri Mahamaya, in the capital of Kapilavatthu, that he would later live a royal life to practice and attain enlightenment while meditating under the Asatta Bodhi tree, that he would have Sariputta and Moggallana as his chief disciples, and Ananda as his attendant. Dipankara Buddha made a complete prediction, as if the enlightenment would happen in the next lifetime of Sumedha. However, The Buddha's prediction is in fact a confirmation that the event will definitely take place in the future, regardless of how distant this future may be. Once the Buddha gives a prediction, the event will not be different from the prediction, nor can it be reversed. So once Sumedha received the prophecy, there was no possibility that he would change his mind or renounce his aspiration to be a Buddha. Just as predicted, lifetime after lifetime, Sumedha continued to practice for Dhamma perfections through selfless acts and devotion, giving away his possessions, even his own flesh and blood, part of his body, his life, and once even his wife and children, until he attained Sabbanyutta Jnana and the Buddhahood in his last lifetime, and eventually became the Buddha of our time, Gautama the Buddha. Immediately after his enlightenment, the Buddha dedicated his whole life to perform selfless acts for the benefit of all sentient beings. After the first sermon and establishment of Buddhism, the Buddha fully devoted his time to performing the Buddha's routine, which was divided into 5 parts and continued around the clock as follows. The pre-noon session. On his alms round, the Buddha would go from house to house. Often people would invite him to their houses for lunch, and he would give a discourse to them and to his followers. Back to the monastery, the Buddha would deliver a discourse and give a suitable object of meditation to the monastics, or go to render spiritual assistance to any sentient beings he could perceive as ready to receive teachings, even if they lived far away. The afternoon session. In the afternoon, the Buddha would deliver a discourse. Towards the evening, around 3 to 4 p.m., the people would flock to him to hear the Dhamma until sunset. After the people left and the gates of the city were closed, the Buddha would then have a wash. The first watch. After sunset, around 7 to 9 p.m., the time would be exclusively reserved for instruction to bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, the substance of which would be particularly directed and suited to each of them. The middle watch. During this period, a large number of celestial beings such as Devas and Brahmas would approach the Buddha to question him on the Dhamma. Several discourses such as Mangala Sutta, or 38 Blessings, and Anattiya Sutta are based on the Buddha's answers to these queries. After this session, the Buddha would then retire to his chamber to rest. The Buddha would mindfully rest no more than 4 hours a day, or from around 1 or 2 a.m. until before sunrise. The Buddha would then wake up, have a wash, and sit inside his chamber, or Gandakuti, radiating thoughts of loving kindness to all beings, and surveying the whole world with his Buddha eye to see whether he could be of any service to anyone. The last watch. With his Buddha eye, the Buddha would seek those needing help from him. Out of selflessness, the Buddha would render spiritual assistance to any sentient beings, regardless of the distance that he needed to travel. What did the Buddha get in return for incessantly working around the clock like this? The Buddha never asked for or received any monetary or material compensation in return for his Dhamma discourses. Performing selfless acts for 20 hours a day for the benefit of other people and all sentient beings, with path, fruition, and Nibbāna as focus. The Buddha was thus worthy of respect as a teacher of gods and humans, Satta Deva Manusanam. And this is the bliss for the Buddha, bliss originating from selflessness. Highly revered Kammatthana tradition, also known as Thai forest tradition, monks such as Ajahn Mun are regarded as a lineage of Pramahakassapa, one of the principal disciples of the Buddha, foremost in ascetic practices, Dhuttangavata. At the age of over 60 years old, upon first meeting with the Buddha 2 years after the Buddha's enlightenment, Pramahakassapa asked to be ordained as a monk under him. Accordingly, Phra Mahakassapa took upon himself the Dhutanga practices, especially the 3 practices of wearing rag robes, living in the wilderness, and living under a tree without the shelter of a roof until his Parinibbāna. At the age of over 100, as one of the most honored and venerated in the Sangha, and with longest years of monastic life, Vasa, among other principal disciples such as Phra Ananda and Phra Anuradhapura, Phra Mahakassapa was elected to preside over the first Buddhist council. Being highly revered principal disciples of the Buddha in both Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism for their ascetic ways of life and austere path of practice, the images of Phra Mahakassapa and Phra Ananda are always positioned on the left and right, next to the main Buddha image in the Mahayana monasteries in Tibet or Vajrayana monasteries in Bhutan. Even exalted Zen Buddhist figures such as Bodhidharma, also known as Dhammo from India, or the first Chinese Supreme Patriarch, and Huineng, the 6th Chinese Supreme Patriarch, are identified in a line that traces all the way back to Phra Mahakassapa. Ajahn Mun's strict observance of Dhutanga practices was following the exemplary example of the path of practice of Phra Mahakassapa. Both Ajahn Mun and Ajahn Sao, highly revered monks who established the Kammatthana tradition, were Dhutanga monks, especially Ajahn Mun, who strictly upheld 5 Dhutanga practices until his demise. The wisdom that Ajahn Mun possessed was regarded as profoundly superior to that of other Arahants, as he had been practicing since the time he made a solemn vow to become a Buddha eons ago. In the Gautama Buddha's time, Ajahn Mun was born in Kuru country, now called New Delhi, India, and lived the life of an aristocrat. The Buddha was at one time residing at the market town called Kamasadama in the Kuru country. There the Buddha addressed Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the discourse on the establishing of mindfulness, to the people of Kamasadama, who were interested in mindfulness meditation. Ajahn Mun was there to listen to this Dhamma teaching. Ever since this time, Ajahn Mun aspired for Buddha Bhumi. In other words, he made a solemn vow to become a Buddha in the future, and so he did not attain any stage of enlightenment in that lifetime. Based on a biography, Luang Por Desarangsi was also born as Ajahn Mun's nephew in the same time period. In ages past, Ajahn Mun had made the same vow to become one of the next Buddhas. Lifetime after lifetime, up until 150 years ago, when he was born in Ubon Ratchathani province and later ordained under Ajahn Sao Kanthasilo. For years, Ajahn Mun wandered in the dense forest observing Dhutanga practices and following the practice of the forest tradition. Years later at Salika Cave, Nakhon Nayok province, while intensifying his efforts at meditation and reaching the crucial final stage, a vision or nimitta of a puppy drinking milk from its mother incessantly manifested itself during his sitting and walking meditation. Normally, while absorbing in high jhanas, meditative states in which practitioner is profoundly still and experiencing deep concentration, nimittas such as visions, bright lights or colors, or obasa, regarded as defilements of insight, vipassanupaskilesa, do not arise. Out of curiosity, Ajahn Mun scanned through his past and found that the puppy was actually himself in his past lifetimes. This vision of a puppy triggered an intense sense of samvega, because even with long-standing resolution and practice to become the Buddha, from time to time he had heedlessly committed evil deeds, resulting in rebirth as a puppy in lower realms, apaya, for many lifetimes. Accordingly, he developed a deep resentment and fear of samsara, and especially apaya, the lower worlds of asuras, animals, petas, and demons. Such apayas can be regarded as like prisons, locking up sentient beings that are terribly difficult to get out of in order to have a rebirth in higher realms. For this reason, Ajahn Mun renounced his original vow to be a Buddha, which relieved him of this concern and opened the way for his meditation to progress smoothly. Ajahn Mun finally attained arahantship and later became widely renowned. Having accumulated the wisdom of enlightenment, bodhinyana, Ajahn Mun was a monk of great wisdom and especially gifted as a teacher. Many hundreds of his disciples, upasakas and upasikas, who trained directly under his tutelage have distinguished themselves by their spiritual achievements, becoming well-known teachers in their own right. Two close disciples of Ajahn Mun, who became key influential figures in the Thai monastic community as Mae Kruba Ajahn, were Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mahabua. Being trained under Ajahn Mun's tutelage, Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mahabua both strictly followed the path of practice of Ajahn Mun and passed on Ajahn Mun's distinctive teaching methods to their disciples, many of whom have attained spiritual achievements and become noble ones. Ajahn Chah was famous for his uncompromising strictness in practicing, teaching Dhamma Vinaya and giving himself to the training wholeheartedly. As a result, he was able to successfully train and pass on his wisdom of enlightenment to innumerable number of Thai and foreign disciples and lay followers. There were more than 100 monks from foreign countries who traveled all the way to practice and learn from Ajahn Chah. One of them is Ajahn Sumedho, Ajahn Chah's famous disciple, who is one who has accomplished the spread of Dhamma into the West. With his clever techniques, Ajahn Chah was able to teach Dhamma to his foreign disciples, despite the fact that he could not speak English or any other foreign languages. He explained, "I do not give them so much formal instructions. I lead them in the practice. If you do good, you get good results. If you do bad, you get bad results. I give them the opportunity to see that. When they practice sincerely, they get good results, and so they develop conviction in what they are doing." Good example is more valuable than formal instructions. When asked by many about how foreign monks could learn anything if Ajahn Chah did not speak English or any other foreign language, Ajahn Chah replied with a simple question. "At your home, do you keep any animals? Have you got cats and dogs? Have you got any oxen and buffaloes? Yes? Can you speak cat, dog, or buffalo language? No? Then how do they know what you want them to do? You do not need to speak their languages, but find a way to train them or show them what to do." Ajahn Chah was the example. He showed others what to do. He led them in the practice, and soon the disciples followed. Luang Por therefore continued the path of practice of Mae Kruba Ajahn by setting a good example and leading in the practice. The first generation of his disciples mentioned that 30 years ago, Luang Por was verbally restrained, so much so that they could almost count the number of words he spoke a day. Then how could Luang Por teach Dhamma to his disciples? He taught by being an example, showing them what to do, leading them in the practice. Path and fruition surely arise in the minds of those who follow his path of practice. The Buddha once attested that as long as people follow the Noble Eightfold Path, the world will forever have noble people and arahants. There have always been arahants in every generation, from the distant past up until the present time. The Buddha's teachings, Dhamma, are timeless, akalika, meaning not restricted or bound by time. This does not mean that the Dhamma remains the same and never changes over time, but rather It means that there is no delay in the matter of giving its own fruit. Once one follows the path of practice, one gets the fruit immediately. Therefore, we should follow the path of practice of the Buddha. The Buddha taught that the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind are tools to cultivate our intellect. Learning secular knowledge and practicing Dhamma are also for the purpose of cultivation of our intellect. As opposed to getting a diploma just to hang on the wall for decoration, or having the Pali Canon Pariyatti just to adorn the bookshelf, we should put Dhamma into practice to cultivate the mind to be dharmic and mindful of the present moment. We should cultivate the mind until Nibbāna eventually arises. But where is Nibbāna? Nibbāna is in our mind. It is a state of mind that arises when one attains right view and follows the right path by avoiding living life based on one's emotions or doing it as one pleases. Having Dhamma as focus and priority and living a moral life with pure conduct, brahmacharya, to end suffering. Human development should follow the path of practice of the Buddha. As the Buddha had, for eons of time, researched, experimented, and selected only the best to teach us. That is the path, fruition, and Nibbāna. Metaphorically speaking, the research, experiment, search, and perfection of the Buddha's teaching can be compared to ready-to-eat food. We do not have to work hard to acquire it. Once we hear the Dhamma, all we have to do is just listen carefully, remember and put the teachings into practice. Then we will eventually achieve the highest end goal in Buddhism, enlightenment. Technological development is necessary, but it is only the development of external objects. The Buddha taught that to walk the middle path, we should cultivate the mind within. The way to do that is to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, the 4 stages of awakening, Sotapanna, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant, can also be attained through the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, which Luang Por has shown us by his example and by giving clear instructions for all of us to follow. Following the path of practice of the Buddha, Ajahn Mun, Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mahabua, Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, and other poor Mae Kruba Ajahns, Luang Por is thus the ultimate role model of a true monk. The only reason why Luang Por has built so many monasteries and branch monasteries is to establish a place where all of us can fully follow the path of practice of the Buddha. These are places to practice for Nibbāna. Luang Por once taught that observance of the 5, 8, 10, 227 or 311 precepts, or Sīla, was just conduct or practice to keep our lives normal. But if one can perfectly observe the mind by not allowing any wrong, that was regarded as Ariya Kanta Sīla. Explained in Ariyatana Gatha, or Noble Wealth, as Sīlancha Yasa Kalayanam Ariya Kantam Pansangsitam, or admirable virtue that is praised and cherished by the noble ones. Ariya Kanta Sīla constitutes the 5 following attributes: Akhanda, unbroken; Achida, untorn; Asabala, unblemished; Akamasa, unblotched; Bujisa, liberating. Sīla, that is, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblotched, and liberating, or Ariya Kanta Sīla, is noble because the strong intention of abstinence or observance originates from the mind itself, as opposed to an involuntary observance, an observance followed out of routine or as formality. Liberating in this case means freedom from desire and defilements, kilesa tanha, from I and mine, or ego self. When one can fully observe one's mind, Sīla becomes complete in the beginning, complete in the middle, and complete in the end. while moral shame and fear of doing unskillful deeds, hiri ottappa, are the foundations of Sīla. Complete Sīla is then the foundation of Samādhi, and perfect Samādhi, full of insight, or Vipassana Paññā, totally purifies the mind. This is why Luang Por particularly praises and honors those who live by virtue of hiri ottappa. Having cultivated and lived by the virtue of hiri ottappa since the day of his ordination, Luang Por has thus become a widely respected monk, worthy of reverence. We are all gathered here today on this auspicious day of Luang Por's 6th cycle and 72nd birth anniversary to pay respect and express our gratitude not only to his body, but most importantly to the purity of his mind. The purity of the mind, this source that leads to the wisdom of enlightenment, cannot be certified or validated with a rubber stamp or by any authority, but one is to certify and validate one's own purity of mind, as stated by the Buddha. Sudi asudi pachatam jnano anyam visodaye. Purity and impurity depends on oneself. No one can purify another. The Buddha explained clearly here that purity is to be realized and attained individually through one's own practice. It cannot be granted by any divine spirit. Even if one were to stand right in front of the Buddha and beg him to give one the purity of mind from which defilements have been wholly uprooted, this cannot be granted. One must oneself gain the knowledge leading to enlightenment through practice. The Buddha only showed the path through his guidelines, repeated teachings and repeated admonishments regarding the danger of unwholesome defilements. This is the reason why Luang Por has taught his disciples and lay followers in the same manner, repeatedly admonishing, repeatedly pointing out the danger in order to show the path to Nibbāna, while those of substance find the strength to keep on walking the path. Those without such strength give up and leave. Hiri ottappa are regarded as Ariya Vinaya, the disciplines practiced by the noble ones. During the times when the Sangha strictly follow Ariya Vinaya, Buddhism is firmly rooted in the community. Dhamma becomes widespread and popular, and the people are firmly established in right view, Samadhi, leading to right practice, and thus the birth of the noble ones, Arya Sangha, everywhere. On the other hand, during the time when the Sangha has loose morals and lacks disciplines and lacks hiri ottappa, Buddhism is on the decline. Dhamma becomes distorted and misinterpreted to facilitate actions that benefit the Sangha's cravings. People instilled with wrong view, miccāditthi, enable the emergence of shameless monks, alaji, everywhere. Lacking interest in the attainment of Nibbāna, alaji are shameless monks who ordain to make a living out of Buddhism. They focus on building external objects or structures, but ignore the practice that leads to the arising of path, fruition, and Nibbāna in the mind. So what is the core and the heart of Buddhism then? The large-scale meditation halls, monasteries, stupas, or the Buddha images? In fact, Buddhism is all and only about the Buddha's teachings. The word sasana or Buddha sasana in Thai language means Buddhist religion and is used interchangeably for Buddhism, refers to teachings in Pali language. In Ovada Patimokkha Gatha, it is clearly explained as follows: Sabba Pappasa Akaranam, not doing any evil. Kusala Supasampada, to be committed to the good. Sachita Pariyodapanam, to purify one's mind. Etam Buddhana Sasanam, these are the teachings of the Buddha. Apparently, Buddhism means the Buddha's teachings, Dhamma Vinaya, the Four Noble Truths, and the Noble Eightfold Path, and not the meditation halls, monasteries, stupas, or the Buddha images. The decline of Buddhism has happened during the times when huge stupas, monasteries, or Buddha images were built and labeled as the biggest structure in the province, in the country, or even in the world. The decline of Buddhism in India and Indonesia are two obvious examples. The great Nalanda University in India was so extensive that when it was ransacked, destroyed, and burned, its massive compounds, collections of books, and manuscripts continued to burn for 3 months. Why is that a great structure as splendid and extensive as Nalanda University could not ensure patronage for Buddhism? The main reason was Sangha, that had become weak and corrupt, leading to an undisciplined life, as opposed to a life of Dhamma Vinaya. Who would patronize a greedy and materialistic Sangha that only catered to the needs of the rich and ignored the poor villagers? A Sangha that even drank alcohol and had wives. In the end, the decline of Buddhism became inevitable. The famous Borobudur temple compounds in Indonesia, one of the greatest Buddhist monuments in the world, also could not sustain patronage for Buddhism in Indonesia. In Thailand, we have to also contemplate the reason behind the building of many huge stupas. Is it true they were built to promote Buddhism? Or were they built for the sake of serving one's Nibbāna, or wrong views and conceit, or feeding one's ego? We should contemplate to truly understand the reasons behind such happenings. Venerable monks with purity of mind have pointed out that times when huge Buddhist structures are popularly built generally indicate not the rise, but the decline of Buddhism. During the rise of Buddhism, as at the time of the Buddha himself, the Buddha never solicited funds from the public to build such things as large-scale stupas. Instead, he focused on training humans to become noble ones, strengthening Dhamma Vinaya, while Buddhist structures or objects were built and donated by kings as an act of worship and in honor of the Buddha and his teachings. Ajahn Mun and Ajahn Mahabua, as well as Luang Por, have never solicited funds to build such structures, but patrons and lay followers, out of faith, have built and donated them to be used appropriately as needed. Therefore, we should all understand that if we wish to support the rise of Buddhism, we should focus on cultivating Dhamma Vinaya in our minds. Regardless of numerous Buddhist structures and objects, once the venerable monks pass without a succeeding disciple, a decline in patronage is inevitable. As Luang Por always remarked about this matter, Luang Por can always build as many as 100 monasteries, but training disciples into a noble one is more beneficial than building 100 monasteries. In the absence of the noble ones and the Dhamma Vinaya, monks will become thieves and monasteries dens of thieves. Thus, there is no benefit in building dens for the thieves to live in. This is the reason why poor Mae Kruba Ajahn always teaches us to strictly follow the path of practice in order to lay the foundations for the rise of Buddhism. Here are some excerpts from Luang Por's Dhamma talk in 1985, which explain very profound Dhamma in a detailed manner, so that we can all put it into practice. Train and allow your mind to be peaceful and at ease. Jai Sabaai. Nothing compares to Jai Sabaai. Make an effort to let happiness arise in the present moment by breathing fully and properly. Breathing in, feeling peaceful and at ease. Breathing out, feeling peaceful and at ease. And seeing the true nature of reality, life as it is. Once one is born, one is bound for old age, sickness and death. This is normal. This is the way life is. Once pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful feelings arise, Just know them and let go of them by contemplating that pleasant, painful, or neither pleasant nor painful feelings are not sure. Bring to mind the unsure nature of all things. Contemplate on unsureness regularly until the mind is fully aware of the unsure nature of the world and can see things the way they really are. That is, not indulging in sensual pleasures arising from contact of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Seeing things the way they are by not placing any value or attaching oneself to sensual pleasures as they are just illusions full of unsureness. This unsureness, used as the object of meditation, is the core and heart of ultimate truth, Satya Dhamma of Buddhism. Most of us have underestimated the importance of unsureness. Even though our eyes are perfectly functional, they are useless as we keep looking at things that are harmful to the mind. When contact happens, if we fail to see things the way they are, we eventually become slaves to those contacts, phassa. They make us happy or suffer, make us laugh or cry again and again. If we mindlessly let our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body and mind be in contact with external attractions, that is the condition for attachment, craving or desire, tanha, clinging, upadana, and suffering to arise. On the other hand, if we are constantly mindful of the contact happening with our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, the conditions for the arising of craving and suffering cease to exist, and so do the craving and suffering. Insight plays an important role here, and the way to develop insight is, whenever contact happens with any of the 6 sense organs, we should contemplate its unsure nature. Be mindful of its impermanence by watching the emotions arise, abide, and pass away, or change into other forms and realize that nothing remains the same forever. This insight can be developed any time and every time that contact creates forms, sounds, odors, flavors, touch, mental objects, and emotions associated with them. If we see the impermanent nature of contact and emotions associated with them at this stage, insight arises, and we will not get caught up in emotions. Otherwise, we will tend to get caught up and eventually unnecessarily react to emotions. The power of the mindfulness of impermanence, just watching and letting it go, just listening and letting it go, realizing that the impermanent and insubstantial nature of emotions is not worth holding on to, can protect one from being a slave to all kinds of emotions and defilements. Those with mindfulness of impermanence can do no evil, as they are not inclined towards any temptation or seduction. Their minds are empty and free from suffering. Please acknowledge that originally the mind itself is empty, but it gets covered with or defiled by incoming thoughts and emotions arising from forms, sounds, odors, flavors, touch. As a result, the mind cannot feel the emptiness in itself or in all things in the world. However, the empty mind is accomplished with the removal of all attachments that have arisen from indulgence or ignorance. In other words, the mind is empty because it is not attached to anything at all. Today being the auspicious day of poor Mae Kruba Ajahn Luang Por Gunhah's 6th cycle, 72nd birth anniversary, we should all perform devotional rituals, puja, with our body and mind as a way to pay respect and express our gratitude to Luang Por and his teachings. However, Samisa or Āmisa Pūja, involving making offerings of all kinds of gifts to Luang Por, is not regarded as a skillful or kusala devotional practice by body and mind. Whenever you perform devotional practices with a concentrated mind, focusing on Sīla, Samādhi and Paññā, with the sole purpose of attaining path, fruition and Nibbāna, then you can be regarded as one who dwells by the side of Luang Por the entire time, even though you may not be able to physically be present here at the ceremony. On the other hand, those who follow Luang Por everywhere and serve at his side, but do not practice living a life without Sīla, Samādhi and Paññā, without the purpose of attaining path, fruition and Nibbāna, are regarded as one who dwells distantly from him. As stated by the Buddha in the Sangattikhanna Sutta, even if a monk taking hold of my outer cloak were to follow right behind me, placing his feet in my footsteps, yet if he were to be greedy for sensual pleasures, strong in his passions, malevolent in mind, corrupt in his resolves, his mindfulness muddled, unalert, uncentered, his mind scattered, and his faculties uncontrolled, then he would be far from me, and I from him. Why is that? Because he does not see the Dhamma. Not seeing the Dhamma, he does not see me. But even if a monk were to live 100 leagues away, yet if he were to have no greed for sensual objects, was not strong in his passion, not malevolent in mind, uncorrupt in his resolves, his mindfulness established, alert, centered, his mind at singleness, and his faculties well restrained, then he would be near to me, and I to him. Why is that? Because he sees the Dhamma. Seeing the Dhamma, he sees me. This year, as a preventative measure against the spread of COVID-19 virus, Luang Por gave instructions to disciples from all branch monastery to cancel the arrangement of the ceremony or activities here, and to instead perform devotional practices at their own monasteries. However, some of us made the effort to come here to pay respect to Luang Por. In any case, whether one is here at the monastery or not, if one single-mindedly practices for Nibbāna, one is always regarded as near to Luang Por. But if one, through following right behind, is full of desire and vexation, then one is far from Luang Por, as one lacks Dhamma Vinaya, a truly precious substance in one's mind. This is the simile that the Buddha used to emphasize that, regardless of the physical distance, one can be far from the Buddha, even though one is right behind, and one can be near the Buddha, even though one is far away. Putting Dhamma into practice and devotional practices are the only indicators that can show whether one is far from or near to the Buddha, or to our poor Mae Kruba Ajahn. Let us pay respects and express our gratitude to Luang Por by offering a gift of devotional practice through the body and mind on this auspicious day, as it is the most precious gift of all. As frequently reminded by Luang Por, if one does not follow the path of practice, although following right behind, one is far from Luang Por, and Luang Por is far away from one, as one's mind would be filled with endless greed, controlled by craving and ill will, resulting in an angry and vengeful mind, incessantly burning emotions, extreme mood swings caused by this unstable state of mind, wrong view, micca-ditthi, leading to lack of clear comprehension between good and evil, excessive sexual desire, inclination to evil thoughts, and lack of self-restraint. One should practice to wholly eradicate these defilements, so that one is always near to Luang Por, near to Dhamma Vinaya, and near to the Buddha. Let us make a resolution to follow the path of practice. By putting down the blood-stained blade, one can eventually attain arahantship. We have all made mistakes and done some evil in the past, but we also have the potential to turn our lives around by just putting down the blood-stained blade. Luang Por always taught, past is past, let it go, just wholly delete it. Do not worry about the future, as it has not happened. This present moment is of the utmost importance. We should be mindful of the present moment and practice in the present moment in order to achieve our highest goal, attainment of Nibbāna. Being born as a human being, one may set a goal for oneself of acquiring happiness, doing good deeds for the benefit of this world, being with loved ones, etc. Everyone's goal is different, depending on the level of intellect of each person. But the Buddha as well as our poor Mae Kruba Ajahn have defined a clear goal for all of us, which is to follow the path of practice of the Buddha by wholly eradicating the defilements to end the suffering and ignorance, which are the causes and conditions for the cycle of birth and death, or samsara. I truly believe that all of us have set and accomplished multiple goals in life before, whether it be acquiring material objects, attaining social status, fame, honor, or practicing moral conduct, all except for this goal, the goal of no rebirth, old age, sickness, and death, the goal of Nibbāna. In this lifetime, if we still aim to achieve the same old goals as in the previous ones, our lives will be no different from the soap operas, the dramatic content of which repeats itself over and over with only the exception of names, faces, hairstyles, and costumes. With this recurring way of living, one loses out on being born as a human, since our human life is infertile, bearing no fruits. Human life is the most precious of all lives. We should thoroughly contemplate with mindfulness and clear comprehension, sati sampajañña, and ask ourselves, have I utilized this precious life to achieve something meaningful or not? If so, what is it? Let us all set our goal in life, the goal to attain Nibbāna. Luang Por constantly reminds us that he is showing us the path to Nibbāna. Thus, for all of us to devotionally practice and eventually attain Nibbāna is the best way to pay respects and express our gratitude to him, Acariya Puja, on such an auspicious day as today. The Lord Buddha, the Exalted One, possessing extensive wisdom, more than all humans and devas, shows to all sentient beings the only path and assures us that the path can overcome suffering, and defilements that sadden the mind can overcome sorrow and grief, so that we can leave mournful and gloomy times behind. By walking the path, one can get rid of sorrow and suffering, regardless of how deep they are. Enjoy the bliss from Dhamma practice, and finally attain the immortal Nibbāna. The only path, as taught by the Lord Buddha, is called Mahasatipatthana. The practice to establish mindfulness, which leads to purity of the mind. Luang Por Gunhah, the venerable monk, spreading boundless loving kindness and compassion to all sentient beings, perfect in both walking the path of practice and keeping graceful duties and etiquettes, distinguished in discipline, practice, and meditation, strictly adheres to the Buddha's teachings. Wholeheartedly, I prostrate myself to pay reverence to the venerable monk Luang Por Gunhah. With a resolute determination, through the power of the Triple Gem and Dhamma perfections of Venerable Poor Mae Kruba Ajahn, may you all be protected from all suffering, sorrow, sickness, and danger, and continue to advance in the Dhamma, in the cool shade of Buddhism, to attain the treasure of the human realm, the heavenly realms, and eventually Nibbāna.